when you really peel back the curtain on modern digital marketing or just like content creation in general, the reality is usually one of just sheer relentless human exhaustion.
Wow, absolutely. Yeah, it's
Like,
exhausting.
I want you to picture the reality for a second. It's, say, a Tuesday at 11 at night, and there's a social media manager just staring at a glowing screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Eyes burning,
We've all been there.
right? And they're trying to figure out how to, you know, translate a company's new product launch into this trending TikTok format. But then they also have to reformat that into a professional LinkedIn post.
Right, which is a totally different tone.
Completely different. And then write a long-form SEO blog and finally, like, draft an email newsletter. It's the absolute definition of what we could call content starvation.
Content starvation. I like that term. It fits perfectly.
Yeah, because a business might have these phenomenal ideas, right, or incredible products.
Yeah.
But the physical human capacity required to just feed the endless maw of the modern internet, it's just overwhelming. You feed the machine today, and tomorrow morning it is starving all over again.
Yeah, and that machine, I mean, it doesn't just demand volume anymore. The expectations for quality, for production value, and, algorithmic adaptation across like 5 or 6 completely different platform formats simultaneously, it's never been higher.
Exactly.
The modern marketer is essentially running on a treadmill that just keeps subtly speeding up while the incline increases.
Yeah, we've all felt the burn of that treadmill. But what we are doing a deep dive into today is a document that, well, it essentially outlines the death of that manual struggle.
It really does. It's wild.
We've got our hands on this incredibly comprehensive, highly technical architectural blueprint and an investment profile for something called the FarmTech AI Factory. And to be clear, this isn't, it's not just another software as a service subscription. This isn't like a better dashboard for your tired marketer.
No.
This is a full-blown industrial scale, next generation AI infrastructure.
Yeah, and the mission of our deep dive today is to really deconstruct the mechanics of this blueprint. Because, I mean, we're going to examine how the system fundamentally transforms artificial intelligence from, a novel chatbot.
Right, like the kind you ask to write a clever poem or whatever.
Exactly, or summarize a PDF. It takes it from that into a fully automated, relentless content and strategy assembly line, one that operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with zero human intervention.
It's crazy. And the stakes here are fascinating to me, particularly because of where this is originating. The source documents detail a Made in Vietnam initiative.
Right, yeah.
We're looking at a roadmap that begins with this highly calculated initial investment of 200 million Vietnamese dong just to construct a single functional prototype,
Yeah.
what they call one AI machine.
But the blueprint immediately pivots to scaling that prototype. Right.
Exactly. The roadmap projects moving from 1 machine to 10, then to 100, and eventually, like, orchestrating thousands of independent AI machines working in complete synchronization. It signals this massive paradigm shift.
It really does.
Because the new competitive moat in business, it isn't going to be simply, owning an AI or having a premium API key. The ultimate advantage is going to be possessing AI production capacity.
And that distinction is it's paramount. I mean, it's the historical leap from a craftsman owning a very good hammer to an industrialist owning an entirely automated robotic manufacturing floor.
Wow, yeah. That's a great way to put it.
Because the output scales nonlinearly, and
Right.
the cost per unit of output just drops to near zero.
Right. So if you've ever felt the sheer burnout of trying to maintain a digital presence, or if you're, trying to understand where enterprise business is moving over the next 36 months, this blueprint is kind of the crystal ball.
It is.
But to truly grasp how a system carries that entire burden, well, we can't just look at the finished videos it spits out, right? We have to start at the bedrock.
You have to look at the foundation. Yeah.
Exactly. We need to explore the architecture of this automated empire, which the documentation designates as System Standard 001.
Right, System Standard 001 or SD 001. And this really lays out the core philosophy of the factory. I mean, the very first principle you have to internalize is that the FarmTech AI factory is not a monolithic application.
Okay.
You don't just boot up the factory as one giant program. It is designed as a highly modular API-first stateless architecture.
Okay, wait.
It's deliberately fractured, basically, into specific isolated layers. So you have a presentation layer for the dashboards, an AI agent layer where the cognitive processing occurred, a workflow layer that dictates the step-by-step logic.
Wow, so it's really chopped up.
Very chopped up. a business rule layer housing the brand constraints, an AI service layer acting as the connective tissue to various language models, an integration layer for external communication, and finally, a foundational data layer.
Okay, those are some hefty architectural terms like modular, API first,
Yeah.
stateless. Let's try to ground this a bit.
Sure.
When you say the system is divided into isolated layers, I'm sort of picturing a massive corporate high-rise where, like, the employees on floor 5 literally cannot access floor 6 without passing through a security checkpoint and, declaring their business.
That visual is actually highly accurate, especially when we factor in the API first mandate.
Okay, explain that part.
Well, in software engineering, an API or application programming interface is essentially a standardized language that allows different pieces of software to talk to each other, right?
Right.
So by demanding the system be API first, the architects ensured that the data layer doesn't just passively bleed information into the AI agent layer.
Oh, I see.
The AI agent actually has to submit a formal formatted request via an API to get any data at all. It forces every interaction within the factory to be deliberate, trackable, and, heavily regulated.
Interesting. Which kind of brings us to the word that stood out to me the most in that list you read. Stateless.
Ah, yeah.
Stateless. Because when we think about artificial intelligence, right, especially the fantasy of having an AI assistant, we usually imagine memory as a feature.
You want it to remember you.
Exactly. You want your AI to remember your brand, remember your tone, remember the conversation you had yesterday. But a stateless architecture means these AI agents don't actually remember anything on their own between tasks, correct?
That is exactly it. And it's the counterintuitive genius of the whole design. I mean, you absolutely want the system as a whole to have a memory, but you emphatically do not want the individual AI agents to possess their own internal unstructured memory.
Why not? That seems like it would be helpful.
Because if you allow an AI agent to build its own state over time, drawing on past conversations and sort of accumulating context organically, you inevitably invite drift.
Drift.
Yeah, it is the breeding ground for hallucinations. The AI might subtly change its tone over 3 months, or worse, it starts conflating facts from a campaign it ran in January with a campaign it is running in July.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see. It's almost like having a human employee who slowly starts taking shortcuts because they think they have the job memorized and suddenly they are making assumptions that are just completely wrong.
Exactly. A stateful AI gets overly confident.
That's dangerous.
It is. And it's precisely the danger they are avoiding here. In this stateless design, every single time a specific AI agent is spun up to perform a task, whether that's writing a single paragraph or analyzing a massive spreadsheet, it is born with a blank slate.
Born with a blank slate.
Zero context. To do its job, it must explicitly pull the exact, officially approved current information from the centralized master database for that specific millisecond of work.
And then what?
Once the task is done, the agent effectively ceases to exist, wiping its slate clean again.
That is just a phenomenal concept. It is forced to, read the official company rulebook every single time it goes to work.
Every single time.
We're giving the AI a temporary hyper-focused brain for about 5 seconds, letting it execute a flawless task based only on the data provided in that moment, and then just terminating the process.
Yep. And tying that back to the modular aspect, this architecture creates incredible resilience.
How so?
Well, imagine the workflow module that interfaces with the Facebook API goes down because, say, Meta changed their security protocols overnight.
Right, which happens all the time.
Exactly. In a monolithic system, that one error might crash the entire program. But in this modular API-first factory, the Facebook publishing module simply throws an error code.
And the rest of the factory.
The rest of the factory is completely oblivious. The video creator module doesn't care. It just keeps churning out rendered MP4s and stacking them in a holding queue, just waiting for the publishing module to come back online.
The analogy I keep coming back to is Henry Ford and the birth of the assembly line.
Oh, that's a good one.
Because before Ford, manufacturing a car was an artisanal process, right? A highly skilled team of mechanics would stand around a single chassis in a workshop and build the entire vehicle from the ground up, piece by piece.
Handcrafted, yeah.
And that is exactly how 99% of businesses use generative AI today. A human marketer sits down with a chatbot, acts as the artisan, writes a prompt, tweaks the prompt, asks the AI to adjust the tone, moves over to an image generator, tries to get the style right.
It's artisan content creation.
Yes, it's better than writing it all from scratch, sure, but it's still slow. It's highly dependent on the operator's skill, and it's wildly inconsistent.
And artisan creation, even when it's augmented by AI, it just cannot scale without linear cost increases. I mean, you still have to pay the human artisan for their time.
Exactly.
The FarmTech blueprint is abandoning the artisan model entirely. They're building the digital assembly line.
So raw data and market trends enter at the start of the conveyor belt. The data moves down the line, and at every station, a specialized stateless AI machine performs one hyper-specific task.
Adding a piece of analysis or generating a snippet of code.
Right, refining an image prompt until a finished, multi-platform, fully optimized marketing campaign just drops off the end of the belt.
And when you are running a factory that relies on thousands of autonomous digital workers passing materials down a line, security, I mean, it's no longer an afterthought. It has to be structural.
Which is where SD007 comes in.
Right, their security standard. They enforce a strict zero trust and least privilege security model across the entire architecture.
Zero trust. I mean, the nomenclature alone sounds intense. It implies that within this corporate high-rise, nobody trusts anybody, not even the people working on the same floor.
That is the exact operating principle, yeah.
Yeah.
In traditional software, if two services live inside the same network perimeter, they generally trust each other.
Right.
In FarmTech's zero trust model, no service trusts another service by default. So the workflow module responsible for generating marketing copy does not inherently trust the module responsible for generating images, even though they are part of the exact same campaign.
Really?
Yeah. Every single API request between those modules must be cryptographically authenticated and authorized in real time.
So if a rogue AI agent somehow gets confused by a bizarre input or, I don't know, an external threat, somehow injects malicious code into the trend scraping module, it literally can't spread.
It hits a wall.
It's like having a worker in the factory whose key card only opens the door to their specific workstation, and they are physically locked out of the rest of the building.
That is the least privilege aspect in action, perfectly described. An AI agent is granted only the absolute minimum permissions required to execute its immediate task. And those permissions, they expire the moment the task is complete.
That's brilliant.
It prevents cascading failures and really insulates the broader business logic from localized anomalies.
Okay, so we have this impenetrable, deeply compartmentalized, stateless blueprint. But a factory floor is really only as valuable as the actual machinery bolted to it, right?
Exactly. We need to see what it builds.
We need to look at the gears turning. And the documentation outlines an assembly line constructed of 60 distinct workflows, which they label WL001 through WL060. Let's trace the journey of a single idea down this massive belt. Because one of the most striking things here is that the factory doesn't wait for a human to tell it what to build.
No, not at all. The initiative is entirely automated. The process actually begins with the trend hunting workflows, specifically WL006 through WL009.
Trend hunting.
Yeah. The system deploys these specialized AI agents whose sole purpose is to continuously scrape the internet. They monitor Google Trends, TikTok search APIs, Facebook engagement metrics, YouTube beta streams.
It's acting as a sleepless reconnaissance team.
Exactly.
But the internet produces, billions of data points an hour. How does it separate a genuine opportunity for a business from just, random viral noise?
Right, because it doesn't just collect the raw data. It actually processes it through a very sophisticated mathematical filter.
Oh, okay.
The AI agents are instructed to clean the scraped data, strip out duplicate hashtags or, bot-driven anomalies, and then they apply a proprietary algorithm to assign a trend score.
A trend score.
Yeah, they calculate the velocity of a trend, like how fast it's growing, and they evaluate its relevance to the factory's designated niche.
Meaning it mathematically ranks the collective attention of the internet at any given hour.
Precisely.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Once it has that prioritized list of trends, the raw material moves to the next station, which is WL010, the keyword research workflow.
Right. And at this station, the AI acts as a senior SEO strategist. It takes the high-scoring trends and clusters them into distinct topics.
Okay.
It runs estimates on search volume, calculates a difficulty and competition score for ranking on those specific terms, and generates a prioritized master list of keywords. It compresses what would take a human analyst a full day of just brutal spreadsheet manipulation into a few seconds of compute time.
And it isn't operating in a vacuum either. I was really struck by WL02 the competitor analysis workflow.
Mhm.
The factory is actively skying on rival businesses.
Oh, it is a highly aggressive workflow.
Yeah.
The system reads a predefined list of your competitors. It dispatches agents to scrape their websites, read their latest blog posts, pull engagement metrics from their social media feeds, analyzing likes, comments, shares, all of it.
It's just scooping up everything.
Everything. And then an LLM processes all that text to analyze their current messaging strategy. It identifies their strengths and, crucially, their weaknesses.
Right.
The goal of WL012 is to cross-reference the competitor data with the trending keywords to find a content gap. It is hunting for a high-volume topic that your competitors are currently ignoring.
That is so cold, calculated, and just brilliant. It finds the exact blind spot in the market. So the reconnaissance is done. We have a verified trend, we have a list of optimized keywords, and we have identified a gap our competitors missed. Now the factory actually have to build a product, which brings us to the creation phase.
Right. The raw intelligence flows into WL013, the idea generator. This workflow takes all that preceding data and uses an AI model to brainstorm multiple content concepts.
But it doesn't just pass them all along, does it?
No, it acts as its own critic. It scores its own generated ideas against the target metrics, discards the weak ones, and selects the optimal concept.
Wow.
And then that concept is handed to WL014, the content plan, which basically acts as the factory's traffic controller.
Okay, so what does the traffic controller do?
It determines the best platforms for the specific idea, it schedules the optimal publishing times, and it checks for any conflicts in the calendar.
And then the work gets distributed to the specialized specialists. We see WL01 is the Facebook writer, WL016 is the TikTok writer, and WL019 is the YouTube script writer.
And the degree of specialization here is really what makes the stateless architecture shine. When the TikTok writer workflow is triggered, it isn't just told to, write a post.
Right, it's not a generic prompt.
No, it is given a hyper-specific set of constraints. It is instructed to write a script with a visual hook in the first 3 seconds.
Essential for TikTok.
Exactly. It has to utilize short, punchy syntax suitable for quick consumption, estimate the spoken duration of the script to ensure it fits the platform's sweet spot, and then evaluate its own draft for engagement potential before finally saving the text to the database.
Generating highly optimized text is impressive, sure. But we've seen language models do incredible things with text for a while now.
Sure.
Where this blueprint truly crosses the threshold into, science fiction to me is the media production phase. That's workflows 21 through 33. This is the part of the document where I actually had to stop and reread the paragraphs because the level of orchestration is just staggering.
Yeah.
Let's unpack exactly how this factory manufactures a video without a human touching a camera or an editing timeline.
Wild, yeah. So the media assembly line starts by bridging the gap between text and visuals using WL021, the image prompt workflow.
Okay.
It takes the approved script and uses an LLM not to write content, but to write code for another AI. It generates a highly technical prompt tailored for an image generation model like Midjourney or Stable Diffusion.
And prompt engineering is an art form itself. I mean, how does it ensure the image doesn't come out looking weird or stylistically wrong?
Yeah.
We've all seen those creepy AI hands.
Right, the extra fingers. Well, it utilizes heavy parameterization. The LLM dictates the lighting style, the camera angle, the specific aesthetic vibe, and critically, it generates a robust negative prompt.
A negative prompt.
Yeah, it explicitly tells the image generator what not to render. So avoiding extra fingers, blurry backgrounds, off-brand colors, that sort of thing. It then passes this sophisticated prompt to WL022, which selects the best available image rendering engine, generates the visual, upscales the resolution to 4K, and mathematically validates the image against brand constraints.
That's insane.
Yeah.
But a raw, high-resolution image is just an asset, right? To make a YouTube video or a podcast, you need a complete multimedia package,
Right.
which is where WL023 comes in. It takes that raw image and acts as a graphic designer, automatically cropping it, superimposing the company logo according to strict safe zone rules, generating large, high-contrast headline text, and exporting a finished platform-optimized thumbnail.
And concurrently, the audio production line is firing up. WL026 takes the master YouTube script and runs it through a specialized translation layer, because written text sounds very different from spoken dialogue, right?
Definitely.
So this workflow rewrites the script into a conversational spoken style. But more importantly, it injects speech synthesis markup language, or SSML.
Okay, you have to explain SSML for those who aren't familiar.
Yeah.
Because this is really the secret sauce for making AI voices sound human, right?
Exactly. An AI voice reading plain text often sounds very monotonous and robotic. SSML allows the workflow to embed embed hidden tags within the text.
Like coding tags.
Yeah. The LLM analyzes the syntax of the sentence. When it detects a comma or a transition in thought, it injects a tag that dictates a specific pause, say, break time equals 500 milliseconds.
Oh, wow.
It adds tags to emphasize certain words, adjust the pitch, or change the speaking rate. It essentially acts as a human voice director, marking up a script for an actor.
That is so cool. And then it hands that directed script to WL027, which feeds it into an advanced AI voice model, synthesizes the audio, and runs a noise reduction algorithm to ensure studio-quality sound. But even then, a dry voiceover isn't a finished product.
No, which is why WL028, the audio master workflow, takes over. It operates as a fully automated audio engineering booth.
Okay.
It takes the synthesized voice track, queries a library of royalty-free background music and sound effects, and mathematically aligns them.
Mathematically.
Yeah. It applies ducking, which is automatically lowering the volume of the background music whenever the AI voice is speaking, levels the master audio, and exports a broadcast-ready MP3 file.
So we have a thumbnail, we have a broadcast quality mixed audio track. Now the visuals have to match the audio perfectly. WL029 generates the video script. This is where the spatial reasoning of the AI is truly tested.
Yeah, this is a complex step.
Because it reads the master audio file to determine the exact length of the track. It then splits the written script into individual scenes, calculating exactly how many frames each scene requires based on the timing of the spoken words.
And then it assigns the images generated back in WL022 to these specific chronological scenes. And to prevent the final video from being just a boring, static slideshow, it generates specific camera movement prompts.
Like what?
Like instructing the final rendering engine to apply a slow pan to the left or subtle zoom in on a specific image. It builds a complete mathematically precise timeline.
WL030 finalizes that timeline into a rigid storyboard. And then we hit WL031, the avatar.
Oh, this is the most computationally heavy task on the line. The factory selects a photorealistic AI avatar from its library that best matches the demographics of the target audience. Then it performs the lip syncing. It takes the finalized mixed audio track from the audio master workflow and runs a localized algorithm to map the phones, the distinct sounds of the speech, to the 3D mesh of the avatar's face, ensuring the mouth movements sync flawlessly with the words.
That is just wow. Finally, all these disparate pieces crash together in WL032, the video render workflow. It imports the storyboard, the lip-synced avatar, the camera movements, the master audio, and the transitions. It renders the entire timeline into a seamless MP4 file, checks the final output for rendering artifacts, and exports a finished 4K video.
Ready to go.
And just to put a bow on it, WL033 uses speech recognition to auto-generate subtitles, hard codes them into the video for mobile viewers who watch without sound, and drops the final asset into the ready-to-publish folder.
I mean, if we step back and trace that path from a raw mathematical trend scraped off a competitor's TikTok feed to a completely synthesized, lip-synced, branded, dynamically edited 4K video with a mixed soundtrack and localized subtitles, executed entirely without a human being clicking a single mouse button.
It is staggering. And the automation doesn't even stop at creation. The publishing and analytics workflows, WL034 to Zero Feed, they handle the distribution. It automatically pushes the assets to Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Threads, LinkedIn, and the corporate blog via APIs. But it also handles the entire downstream sales cycle.
Yeah, the integration with the CRM is vital here. If a potential customer watches that AI-generated video and clicks a link to fill out a form on the website, WL041 immediately captures the lead.
It doesn't miss a beat.
Right. It runs a deduplication check, scores the lead based on their input, and tags their profile in the database. Then WL042 updates the CRM pipeline, assigns the lead to a human sales representative, and generates an automated follow-up task on their calendar.
Meanwhile, WL043 intercepts that CRM data and automatically triggers a personalized email marketing sequence tailored to whatever specific product the AI determined the customer was interested in. It isn't just an automated marketing department. It is an integrated video production studio, a media distribution network, and a sales development representative, just looping infinitely.
And it is endlessly self-auditing, too. Workflows 045 through 047 run on a delay, gathering social analytics, SEO ranking changes, and direct sales revenue attributed to the campaign.
Right.
WL048 pipes all that data into a real-time dashboard, and WL049 goes as far as generating a formatted multi-page PDF report complete with executive summaries and data visualizations, dropping it into the management folder every Monday morning.
Okay, this brings up a massive point of friction for me. I really need to push back on the architecture here.
Okay, go for it.
Because I was reading through the very first set of processes in the document, WL001 through WL004. These are explicitly labeled as the CEO workflows.
Right.
And when you look at the sequence of operations, it feels like the hierarchy is completely inverted.
How do you mean?
Well, the system dictates that the AI aggregates the previous day's KPIs. The AI analyzes the competitor trends. The AI evaluates the company's financial goals. The AI then proposes the daily strategy. And finally, the AI breaks that strategy down and assigns actionable tasks to the human CEO and the various AI agents. It sets deadlines for the CEO.
Yeah.
I have to ask, in this paradigm, who is actually in charge? Is the AI the boss and the human CEO is just like a rubber stamp, a fleshy node in the network taking orders from the machine?
It is a profound philosophical question. And I mean, on the surface, it absolutely looks like a subversion of human agency.
Right.
But if you dig into the actual mechanics of those workflows, what they are automating isn't leadership. They are automating cognitive load. The AI is positioned not as the chief executive, but as the ultimate omniscient executive assistant.
But an assistant implies a subservient role. Generating a corporate strategy and assigning a task to the CEO sounds a lot like command and control. If the machine is deciding what the problem is and how to fix it, the human is just executing.
Well, think about the reality of executive leadership at scale. The primary bottleneck for a CEO isn't actually making a decision. It's the exhaustive, agonizing process of parsing through mountains of noisy data to figure out what actually requires a decision.
Okay, fair point.
What is on fire and what is just smoldering, you know? WL001 takes the raw KPIs and compares them to the baseline goals. If a metric is failing, say, lead acquisition costs spiked by 40%, it uses an LLM to perform a root cause analysis across all the other data streams.
So it's synthesizing the noise into a narrative.
Exactly. And then it applies a calculated priority score. It mathematically judges the severity of the threat or the magnitude of the opportunity. If that priority score crosses a critical predefined threshold, it doesn't just put a note on a dashboard. It executes a bypass and sends a direct urgent alert to the CEO's secure messaging app.
Okay, but what about the strategy generation? WL003 proposes the daily battle plan.
Right, but the word proposes is the operative term there. WL004 takes that strategy, breaks it down into tasks, assigns the menial or programmatic tasks to the AI agents within the factory, and identifies the high-leverage human-centric tasks like approving a massive budget shift or calling a key client to smooth over an issue, and schedules them for the CEO. The CEO still holds the ultimate authority to reject the strategy, alter the task list, or pivot the company. The automation simply removes the 4 hours of spreadsheet analysis required to figure out who needs to be called. It hands the executive a fully researched, prioritized triage list the moment they open their laptop. It is elevating the human to focus solely on high judgment execution.
That distinction makes sense.
Yeah.
The AI handles the synthesis, the human handles the judgment. It makes the executive infinitely more efficient, but it leaves the ultimate accountability with the person.
Exactly.
However, this level of automation introduces a terrifying vulnerability. I mean, we're talking about a system where over 100 independent AI agents are autonomously generating thousands of pieces of copy, designing images, rendering videos, and emailing clients across every major platform.
The volume is immense, yeah.
And generative AI is, by its very nature, probabilistic and chaotic. It hallucinates. It gets creative when you don't want it to. How on earth do you control this digital workforce? How do you stop an AI agent from going completely off-brand, deciding it wants to use neon pink instead of corporate blue? Or worse, inventing a completely fictitious, hallucinatory claim about a product that gets the company sued?
You have just articulated the multi-million-dollar bottleneck for enterprise AI adoption.
Right.
And FarmTech's architectural answer to this chaos is what they call the master data standards, categorized as MD001 through MD0DENS. If the workflows are the engine of the factory, the master data is the straitjacket of consistency.
The straitjacket, as the perfect visual. Let's explore exactly how this straitjacket is constructed.
Well, the foundational rule of this architecture, the absolute inviolable law, is the concept of the single source of truth. The documentation explicitly forbids any workflow, from WL001 to WL060, from hard-coding brand information.
Meaning a software developer building this factory cannot simply type the company's marketing slogan or like the specific hex code for their blue logo directly into the code of the Facebook writer workflow.
That is strictly prohibited. The workflow itself must remain a completely blank, logic-only vessel. When the Facebook writer workflow wakes up to do its job, it doesn't inherently know who it works for.
Wow.
It must obsessively query the master data libraries to discover its identity, its visual constraints, and its required tone of voice for that specific millisecond.
The level of detail they enforce in these databases is intense. Let's look at MD002, the brand identity standard. It goes way beyond just saying, make the graphics look professional.
Oh, yeah. MD002 is a mathematical rulebook for aesthetics. It dictates strict adherence to specific hexadecimal color codes. For instance, the source material explicitly defines FarmTech's primary color as #2E7D32, which is a very specific dark shade of green. It dictates the primary typography must be Montserrat, and all body copy must be Roboto. It establishes algorithmic rules for negative space around the corporate logo, defines the exact opacity percentage for watermarks, and dictates safe zones for text placement.
So when the image prompt workflow we talked about earlier, -WL0D021, when it tells the generative AI to create a graphic, it literally pulls these exact hex codes and typography rules from MD002 and injects them as non-negotiable parameters into the prompt.
Exactly. The AI is physically constrained from using the wrong shade of green, and the same rigid control applies to the text through MD003, the brand voice standard. This is how you prevent a B2B corporate AI from suddenly sounding like a hyperactive teenager on TikTok.
This was my favorite part of the blueprint. How do you force a probabilistic language model to adopt a consistent personality without it sounding like a robotic customer service menu?
You give it a highly specific mathematical formula for personality. The source document doesn't just say, be professional. It dictates the FarmTech official voice as a strict ratio. 70% expert, 20% inspiring, and 10% friendly.
70-20-10. That is incredibly precise boundary setting.
It forces the LLM to balance its output. Furthermore, MD003 enforces structural formatting. It mandates short active sentences. It contains a hard-coded blacklist against hyperbole, explicitly banning the AI from generating excessive clickbait or sensationalist headlines.
No, that's smart.
It dictates the exact pronouns and honorifics to use when addressing the customer, ensuring cultural and professional appropriateness. It instructs the AI to frame every piece of content around a solution rather than just dwelling on the customer's problem.
It is an editorial style guide that the writer literally lacks the capacity to disobey. But a brand voice is useless if it's talking to the wrong person, which leads into MD005, the customer persona standard.
Right. The factory doesn't blast generic marketing into the void. It targets highly localized, specific psychological profiles stored in the MD005 database. The blueprint provides a concrete example, persona ID PS000001.
And this isn't just a broad demographic bucket like men aged 18 to 35. It's almost uncomfortably specific. It is a deep psychological dossier. The database defines this persona as a 28 to 40-year-old office worker or mid-level manager earning roughly 15 to 30 million VND a month.
Okay, pretty standard so far.
But the true power lies in the pain points data. The database instructs the AI that this specific persona frequently works late, routinely attends corporate networking events where they feel obligated to consume alcohol, suffers from a severe lack of time for self-care, and harbors a deep, active anxiety about their liver health.
The system knows their underlying fears. It knows their primary goal is to find a quick way to detoxify their body and eliminate fatigue after these parties. It even dictates their media consumption habits, noting this persona strongly prefers short-form video content under 60 seconds that utilizes hard, real-world statistics to prove a point.
So imagine the TikTok writer workflow spinning up. It queries MD003 and grabs the 70-20-10 expert inspiring friendly voice formula. It queries MD005 and grabs the dossier on the overworked liver anxious manager. It queries the product database, and it synthesizes all those constraints into a highly targeted, perfectly toned, psychologically optimized script.
And tying this back to the stateless architecture, this is how they solve the biggest vulnerability of generative AI.
Yeah.
The drift of inconsistency. By forcing every single stateless agent to constantly cross-reference these master data libraries, the system mathematically guarantees a unified corporate message across every single channel.
We can see this play out across the entire ecosystem. Let's look at MD004, the product library, and MD006, the campaign library.
Oh.
The blueprint provides an example product, FarmTech Detox Herbal Tea, with a hard-coded price point of exactly 250,000 VND. This product is tied to an active campaign stored in MD006 titled Healthy Liver Every Day.
Right, so because of the master data constraints, a video generated for YouTube Shorts by one AI agent, an entirely different 2,000-word SEO article written by a second AI agent, and a follow-up email drafted by a third AI agent working in the CRM will all refer to the exact same product, quote, the exact same 250,000 VND price, and hammer home the exact same healthy liver campaign messaging.
Yep.
They're all singing from the exact same sheet music flawlessly.
Which introduces an incredible layer of operational agility. Think about the physical mechanics of changing a marketing strategy. If the human marketing director decides on a Friday afternoon that they are rebranding, changing the company's primary color from green to blue, and raising the price of the detox tea to 275,000 VND, they do not have to open up the code and rewrite hundreds of individual AI prompts to reflect the change.
They don't touch the workflows at all.
Exactly. This is the engineering elegance of MD007, the prompt library.
Explain how that decoupling works in practice, because this is where the system feels truly futuristic.
Well, the AI prompts are stored in MD007 entirely decoupled from the actual business data. The prompts are written as abstract templates utilizing variables. A prompt template for a social media post doesn't say, write a post about FarmTech detox herbal tea for 250,000 VND.
What does it say?
It is coded to say, write a post about bracket product name, bracket for bracket, price bracket, targeting bracket, persona bracket, utilizing the bracket brand voice bracket constraints.
It's essentially an incredibly complex, high-stakes game of Mad Libs.
Precisely. When the workflow executes, it pulls the blank template from MD007. It then rapidly queries the other master data databases, MD004 for the product, MD005 for the persona, MD003 for the voice, injects the current variables into the brackets, and fires the finalized instruction to the language model.
So if the executive team decides to pivot the entire company strategy, they simply change one cell in a database. They update the hex code or the price string in the master data, and the entire digital workforce adapts instantly. The very next workflow that triggers across any platform will automatically pull the new blue color and the new higher price without a single line of code being manually rewritten.
Total instant systemic agility.
We have the blueprint, we have the expansive 60-step assembly line, and we have the strict master data rulebook ensuring perfect consistency. But a massive question remains about the actual management of this digital workforce. Because running hundreds of complex AI queries, generating 4K video, and synthesizing audio 24/7 sounds incredibly expensive from a compute standpoint.
Oh, it can be.
Furthermore, even with the best prompts and brand voice rules, an LLM might still hallucinate a dangerous medical claim about that detox tea. Who is the foreman making sure this factory isn't burning through cash or breaking the law?
The governance of the factory is handled by the advanced management workflows, categorized as WL061 through WL065, acting in concert with the critical compliance standard MD0.
Let's address the cost and management first. Who is actually directing the AI traffic?
While there is an AI agent manager, WL061, that monitors the health of the agents, the truly fascinating component is WL064, the AI model router. This is the invisible foreman. It is essentially the brain behind the brains.
The brain behind the brains. Okay, let's explore that. In a typical software application today, if you build a tool that uses AI, you generally hardwire it to a specific provider. You connect it to OpenAI's GPT-4 API, or Anthropic's Claude, or Google's Gemini. Every time your app needs to think, it calls that specific, expensive cloud model.
The AI model router in the FarmTech architecture completely upends that static approach. When any task is generated by any workflow on the assembly line, it doesn't go straight to an AI model. The router intercepts the request. It acts as an intelligent, ruthless dispatcher.
What criteria is the dispatcher using to make a decision?
The router analyzes the incoming task and evaluates it dynamically based on 3 specific vectors: the estimated token cost of the prompt, the required speed or latency acceptable for the task, and the cognitive complexity of the request. It then cross-references those requirements against a registry of available AI models and routes the task to the most efficient option for that specific millisecond.
Give me a practical example of how that saves the factory money.
Let's say a workflow needs to perform a very basic task, like extracting 3 keywords from a short paragraph of text. The router intercepts this and calculates that it is a low-complexity task. The architectural standard explicitly dictates a local AI-first policy.
Meaning what?
The FarmTech infrastructure maintains its own local open-source models, like a smaller Llama or Ollama model, running directly on their own internal server hardware.
Meaning they don't have to pay a cloud provider per token to use it. It's essentially free compute, minus the electricity.
Exactly. The router recognizes it doesn't need to pay for the massive cognitive overhead of GPT-4 for simple keyword extraction. It routes the task to the local model, the task is completed for fractions of a penny, and the result is returned instantly.
But what if the task is highly nuanced? Say, the idea generator workflow, trying to cross-reference competitor strategy with keyword difficulty to find a content gap.
The router performs the same evaluation and determines that the local, smaller model lacks the reasoning capability to execute the task reliably. It calculates that a failure would require a rerun, costing more time. Therefore, it dynamically routes that specific high-complexity task out to a powerful, paid cloud model like Gemini Pro or GPT-4, accepting the higher API cost to guarantee the quality of the output.
So the AI model router is functioning as an automated project manager, running a continuous millisecond by millisecond auction for compute power. It looks at every single task on the assembly line and hires the absolute cheapest digital freelancer capable of getting the job done right.
It optimizes for cost, latency, and quality on every single API call across the entire enterprise. It is a masterpiece of efficiency.
Okay, so the router controls the raw compute costs. But what about the legal and reputational risk? The factory is generating content about a health supplement. The master data helps, but AI is probabilistic. What happens if the LLM ignores the prompt and decides to confidently claim that this herbal tea will cure cancer?
This is where MD010, the compliance standard, steps in. If the AI router is the frugal project manager, MD0100 is the incredibly strict, uncompromising legal department that redlines every single piece of communication before it is allowed to leave the building.
The compliance police. How do they actually enforce the law on a machine?
It is a rigid, multi-layered filtration system. Before anything is allowed to be published by the distribution workflows, whether it's a massive 4K video, a 2,000-word blog post, or a 3-word tweet, it must physically pass through the compliance layer. The system actively scans the generated content against strict, legally mandated databases.
What exactly is it scanning for?
Using the health supplement example from the blueprint, the compliance engine maintains a robust database of blacklisted keywords and prohibited conceptual claims. It actively parses the AI's output, searching for banned, non-compliant phrases. It explicitly looks for terms that imply medical guarantees, phrases equivalent to 100% cure, immediate effect, or magic pill.
And if the scanner detects one of those phrases hidden in paragraph 4 of an SEO article?
The architecture dictates a strict action if failed protocol. The system possesses a hard stop. It physically cannot publish the flagged content. The compliance layer intercepts the asset, blocks the API call to the publishing platforms, and automatically routes the offending content into a quarantine queue for manual review by a human legal or compliance officer.
It builds a physical wall between creative generation and legal verification. The AI writer doesn't have to also be the lawyer. The compliance engine handles the liability.
Furthermore, MD0100 isn't just about blocking bad content, it enforces the inclusion of mandatory legal content. If the system detects that the AI is generating content related to the detox tea, the compliance engine automatically appends required disclaimers.
Oh, I see.
It forces the inclusion of phrases like, "This product is not medicine and does not replace medical treatment," attaching it to the bottom of the article or superimposing it as text on the video asset. The AI agent doesn't even have to remember to add the disclaimer. The compliance layer forces it in at the point of export.
That is incredibly smart risk mitigation. And to manage an operation of this magnitude, the oversight has to be exhaustive. I noticed WL06-5, system monitoring and cost. This isn't just a simple dashboard checking if the website is online, is it?
Not at all. WL065 treats the entire AI infrastructure as a heavy industrial manufacturing plant. When you run an AI factory, you are burning massive amounts of compute power. This workflow tracks token usage dynamically, categorizing it per workflow and even down to the individual AI agent in real time. It monitors the physical temperature of the GPUs in the server racks, tracks VRAM usage, and tallies external API call costs to the fraction of a cent.
So it monitors AI compute power the exact same way a steel mill monitors its consumption of raw iron ore and electricity.
Precisely. It allows the factory to calculate the exact, true operating costs of every single piece of content it produces. The executive dashboard doesn't just show that 100 TikTok videos were successfully published on Tuesday. It breaks down the math, showing exactly how many fractions of a cent in token costs were expended to generate the image, synthesize the audio, and render the avatar for video number 42.
The granularity of that financial control is wild. But this reliance on massive compute power, sprawling PostgreSQL databases, vector databases for the AI knowledge retrieval, external cloud APIs, it introduces a catastrophic point of failure. If the entire brain, marketing department, and sales force of a company exists entirely within this digital infrastructure, what happens when the factory catches fire? What happens if Amazon Web Services experiences a massive regional outage or a server rack physically dies?
That brings us to the final critical pillar of the architecture, SD02 and SD011. This section of the blueprint is entirely dedicated to bulletproofing the factory. It covers resilience, disaster recovery, and scalability.
Let's dig into resilience first. SD026 dictates backup and disaster recovery. Because if a company hands the keys over to an automated factory, losing that system isn't just an inconvenience, it's a fatal event for the business.
The standard enforces an uncompromising, enterprise-grade data protection protocol known as the 3-2-1 backup strategy. This dictates that the factory must, at all times, maintain 3 total complete copies of its critical data. Furthermore, those copies cannot live on the same type of hardware. They must be distributed across at least 2 different types of storage media. And finally, one of those complete copies must be physically located in an off-site, geographically separate location.
So if a freak disaster occurs, say the primary data center literally floods or burns to the ground, the system has an air-gapped backup safely stored in another city.
Yes. But having data is only half the battle. The speed of restoration is what dictates survival. The blueprint defines strict mathematical recovery metrics using industry standards, RTO and RPO.
Break those down for us. What are the actual safety margins?
RTO stands for Recovery Time Objective. It defines the absolute maximum amount of time the business can survive being offline before catastrophic damage occurs. The FarmTech standard mandates a highly aggressive RTO of just 2 hours for its core databases. Meaning, if a total disaster strikes and the primary systems go dark, the automated recovery scripts and the IT infrastructure team have a maximum window of 120 minutes to spin up the backup servers and get the factory fully operational again.
2 hours from total destruction to full operation. And what about RPO?
RPO is the recovery point objective. This metric dictates data loss tolerance, how far back in time you have to go to find your last good backup. The standard mandates an incredibly tight RPO of 15 minutes.
15 minutes. So they are essentially mirroring the database constantly.
Exactly. They're running continuous incremental backups. In the absolute worst-case scenario, a total unrecoverable server failure, the factory only loses the last 15 minutes of work the AI agents performed.
That is a remarkably tight safety net. Okay, so the factory can survive a disaster. But what about success? SD01 deals with scalability. Let's say a marketing campaign goes incredibly viral. Suddenly, the CRM is flooded with 10,000 leads, and the system needs to generate 10,000 personalized emails and update 10,000 database rows in the next hour. If the factory starts with just a few AI machines, how does it handle that massive spike in demand without crashing under its own weight?
The blueprint explicitly rejects vertical scaling in favor of a horizontal scalability model.
Explain the difference between vertical and horizontal scaling in this context.
Vertical scaling, or scaling up, is the traditional approach. When your software gets slow, you simply buy a bigger, more expensive server. You add more RAM, you buy a faster CPU, you install a larger hard drive.
But there's a physical limit to silicon. Eventually, you can't build a single computer big enough to handle the load, and it creates a massive single point of failure. If that one mega server dies, everything dies.
Exactly. The FarmTech architecture utilizes horizontal scaling, or scaling out. It doesn't rely on one massive machine. The architecture is built on Docker containers and microservices. The entire factory is essentially a collection of lightweight, independent, modular software containers.
So how does it handle the viral spike?
When the queue of tasks rapidly expands, when those 10,000 emails need to be written, the load balancers detect the strain on the existing AI agents. Instead of overloading them, the system automatically elastically expands. It spins up dozens or even hundreds of identical temporary new Docker containers, spawning a massive new workforce of AI agents in seconds. It distributes the 10,000 tasks across this expanded workforce, processes the queue rapidly, and once the task volume drops back to normal, it automatically shuts down and deletes those extra containers, instantly reducing the compute cost.
It breathes in and out, matching the exact size of the workforce to the exact demand of the minute. But all of this rigorous control brings you to a final question about the culture of innovation. We've spent the last hour outlining an incredibly rigid corporate structure. We have strict version controls dictated in SD012, mandatory 15-minute backup rules, compliance police redlining every word, isolated testing environments mandated by SD009. Doesn't this massive layer of enterprise bureaucracy inherently suffocate the rapid, agile innovation that makes AI so powerful in the first place? Doesn't a straitjacket, by definition, stop you from moving fast?
It is the most common critique of enterprise architecture, but this blueprint argues the exact opposite. Structure, when engineered correctly, does not inhibit speed. It is the prerequisite for moving fast safely. By utilizing infrastructure as code and immutable deployments, FarmTech ensures that their developers can iterate at breakneck speed without risking the integrity of the company.
How does the structure actually enable that speed?
Imagine a scenario where a developer attempts to optimize the prompt template for the TikTok workflow to increase engagement, but they make a critical logical error in the code, and the AI agent suddenly starts hallucinating wild claims. Because of SD012, the version control standard, every single keystroke of change is tracked and logged. The system's monitoring alerts instantly detect the anomaly in the output or the spike in error rates.
And because it's a modular, stateless system?
Precisely. They don't have to take the factory offline to fix it. They simply execute an automated, instantaneous rollback to the previous, stable version of that specific prompt.
Because the safety net is so incredibly strong and the blast radius of any mistake is contained by the zero-trust architecture, the engineers can afford to take massive risks. They can leap higher because they know the net will catch them.
It allows for sustainable, high-velocity innovation. They can literally upgrade the machinery, test new LLM models, and rewrite the workflow logic while the factory assembly line is still running at full speed.
It is a breathtaking, somewhat intimidating vision of the future of enterprise operations. Let's zoom out and recap the sheer monumental scale of what we've unpacked today. We started with the very human problem of content starvation, the exhaustion of trying to keep up with the digital world. And the solution outlined in these documents is the FarmTech AI Factory, a visionary, meticulously engineered ecosystem that takes raw, unstructured data and completely automates the entire life cycle of corporate communication.
It systematizes trend spotting, keyword research, gap analysis, conceptual brainstorming, multi-platform copywriting, complex image prompt engineering, graphic generation, thumbnail layout, script translation into markup language, voice synthesis, audio mixing, timeline generation, camera movement, avatar lip syncing, video rendering, subtitle generation, multi-platform API publishing, lead capture, CRM deduplication, email marketing sequences, and real-time microcent cost analysis.
It's dizzying. And it executes all of that while remaining strictly confined by a centralized, mathematically enforced brand identity, an exact 702,010 brand voice ratio, legally binding compliance protocols, and enterprise-grade zero-trust cybersecurity. All orchestrated by an invisible AI router that haggles for the cheapest compute power millisecond by millisecond.
It represents a fundamental, irreversible shift in the landscape of business. The competitive war over the next decade is no longer about who can hire the largest team of social media managers or who can craft the cleverest individual ChatGPT prompt. The war will be won by whoever can build, secure, and manage the most robust, scalable AI production infrastructure. And that reality leaves us with a final, somewhat provocative thought to ponder as we wrap up. We've just spent this entire deep dive marveling at how this factory is engineered to create absolute, scalable, frictionless perfection. It perfectly adheres to the corporate hex colors. It perfectly executes the psychological profiling of the persona. It flawlessly checks every legal disclaimer without fail. It produces beautifully rendered, flawlessly targeted, pristine content 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without ever burning out or making a typo.
It is the ultimate industrialization of human creativity.
Exactly. But let's extrapolate that timeline. What happens when this blueprint becomes the absolute standard? What happens in 3, 5, or 10 years when every single business, from the massive multinational enterprise down to the local independent coffee shop on your corner, possesses their own bespoke AI factory? When the entire digital ecosystem, every feed, every inbox, every search result, is utterly flooded with absolute algorithmic perfection.
The baseline expectation for quality will rise exponentially. Perfection will no longer be an achievement. It will be the minimum entry requirement.
Right. And when perfection inevitably becomes a cheap commodity, when a flawless 4K lip-sync video tailored perfectly to a consumer's deepest psychological pain points costs a business mere fractions of a cent to produce and distribute, how does a brand actually stand out in a sea of flawless execution?
That is the ultimate paradox of total automation. When everything is perfect, perfection becomes invisible.
These source materials show us the brilliant, undeniable blueprint for winning the current production war. But in a future where everyone possesses infinite AI manufacturing capacity, where every pixel, every pause, and every syllable is optimized by a machine for maximum algorithmic engagement, perhaps the only remaining competitive advantage, the only thing that will actually cause a human being to stop scrolling and pay attention, will be genuine human imperfection. Unpredictability. The raw, unoptimized, messy, inefficient authenticity of a real person making a mistake.
It's a fascinating, almost ironic conclusion. The more perfect and ubiquitous the machines become, the more incredibly valuable the human flaw might be.
Something to chew on as you scroll through your perfectly curated feeds today.